Hello, everyone. Today we are chatting with Paul Hopcroft from UK. Paul was very kind, making himself available, explaining and showing one of his cases that he thought would be very interesting to share with other users and followers of this channel. So we'll go through this real case with him, and hope you learn something new and you see some interesting considerations. Hi, Paul.
Hiya, how are you?
Yeah, very well. What about yourself?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So tell us a bit about yourself, your work, your role in the police, so we know a bit the context of your work.
Well, I work for Nottinghamshire Police in the UK. Been here since 2006. Started straight into the video unit. It was all VHS tapes back then. Just slowly progressed, expanded my knowledge, met people like Spready, who's one of your staff, many other people around the world, part of the Lever organisation as well. So we've done through Lever 1 to 4. Hopefully quite knowledgeable. I tend to try and help people wherever I can, use any knowledge and experience that I've built up over the years. It was actually Spreader that introduced us to ampedfive, and from there we've managed to progress and make lots of things happen.
Great. And I see you are pretty active on the listserv, on our Discord channel, everywhere, and it's really appreciated that you always like to help people network and exchange ideas, because it's how we grow, I mean, as a profession, as a community.
Well, it is. So, you seek help as much as you give it, so it works both ways.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so tell us a bit of context about this case that you are going to show us.
This came in as a murder with no known suspect at the time. Happened late February last year. A female was found with multiple stab wounds in her own property, but it's a very quiet village outside of Nottingham. Very few CCTV cameras, or it's one of those places where it's a little quiet village. The odd car drives past the houses every now and again, and that's about it. At the time, say there was no known offender, so very little CSI work was done, because there was no obvious fingerprints or anything like that. So it left it very down to anything we could find visually. The mobile phone only showed that it was disconnected from a server at a certain time, or from the router, should I say. But there was no sign of that, but it was the only mobile phone connected as well. It left a lot of questions being asked. Detectives trawled the area, managed to find a couple of properties with CCTV, one of them being a front gate a few doors down from where this property was, where the murder had happened. So that was where it all started. Initially, the problem was getting the footage off the system. It's a multi-million-pound house with a DVR hidden away in a fitted wardrobe. So it's gaining access and then downloading it. We did end up removing the hard drive in the end, so the person who owned the property wasn't keep going over and over the same footage. But this footage just showed one person walk part of the way across the driveway and then walk back out of sight. Prior to that, there'd been a very short glimpse of what we believe was a cyclist caught in the headlights of a vehicle. So that's left it down to the investigating team to start with that. Our problem was we could show what this person did, but then there was absolutely nothing else to say who he was or anything like that. That's when, about a week later, with no leads or anything like that, and they were trying to find anything to try and move forward, was a suggestion of a height assessment, just so we could say whether he was 5 foot or 6 foot or somewhere in between. We weren't planning on being 100% accurate, because we know it's an interpretation of what's there, but to the nearest point of just narrowing that height scale down, and that's where all this started.
Okay, so essentially, what you're going to show us is assessing the height of this subject, this unknown subject, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I guess we'll see it in a moment, but the main issues with this video, I guess, was the horrible quality as usual.
To be fair, the quality wasn't too bad.
Okay.
It had been set up properly. It was an NVR. On a normal day, we would have gone and done a reverse projection, but somewhere in the process between us removing the hard drive and getting back to our office, the main camera had gone down. It did turn out in the end that a maintenance team that were on the property doing some landscaping work had actually damaged the wiring. So we had literally the view we had it from the nighttime view and a few daytime, obviously any daytime footage. And that was the only thing we had to work with. It was also a DAB file in a H.265 format. So we were struggling to process the files in the first instance, which again, we managed to do that with Convert DVR anyway. So it's all stepped through the AMP process.
Okay, very interesting. How do you decide if to do a reverse projection versus taking directly the measurements on the video?
That's normally made above my head, how we process this. But on this occasion, because we didn't have that camera to go back to and go through, that took that completely out of the equation. So our only options were then was just to try and use a single view metrology and the 3D measure to try and see what we've got. There was a couple of fixed points on the view that you'll see anyway that made it a little bit easier for us.
Okay, good. So if you want to open 5 and let's see what you've done.
Right. So this is where it all started. Now, this person here, I believe, was the cyclist that was seen in this very distance, right down in this corner down here. But it was hard to say for definite. So first considerations I looked at with this is, what have we got as to use as a measure point? So our main measure point we used was this one, because, and we refer to that as post A. Primarily because it's closest to the subject and it's a reasonable comparison just as it stands. Excuse me. We also use this one at post B here as a reference point. So if we've got this measurement right, this should be very close, if not the same. And as from that, the other thing to look at was the lens distortion. As you can see by this point down this side here, it's given a substantial curve. So to just get rid of that, I looked at using this line here, which from being on site, I know that is a straight line all the way down there. And it goes straight across where any other points will be used. Just to check everything first, this was taken from a video. So I did the file info and then I used the range selector. So I just literally narrowed it down to a small group and then used a single selector just to select the individual still I was going to work on. From there, I've saved that still. just so that was put out as a starting point. I know exactly where I was and what I was going from. The next point I looked at was, let's say, the understalk to use to remove the lens distortion. So when I go into there, click on that one. I've used this line along there, look, where that was. And when you apply that, that takes out all the distortion. Now, I wasn't too interested about the timestamp or anything like that on this, because I've already got that from the still. I was more interested, is this a straight line along here? Has this gone straight? So I've got that, the best possible image I can work from in that respect. It's from there, I then, again, save that image. I've got that saved. I can work from, I've got a process of showing how I've done things then. From this point, I went into the 3D measure. Here's where I start picking the axis for the 3D measure. Now what I've got is again, whilst on site, I could see that this block paving is all straight all the way down those there. So whilst the lines are really hard to see properly on here, I compared this to a daytime view afterwards, and I can see where these lines go. So I knew that I was actually accurate with most of the stuff that I'd done. So I started by putting my 2 X lines in, running from the length of the driveway on the best possible lines I could see, and approaching where the subject was as well. So I'm in that sort of range where I can. I then looked at using the 2 lines across, again, as near as I can on both sides. So it's as near as I could possibly get. That element of accuracy does make a difference when you do your measure at the end. So it does help. I then look for the 2 horizontal lines, no, vertical lines, which I've used these same 2 posts because they are the straightest thing I could find on the screen, apart from this up here, but I have manufactured that to be straight where I know they are straight. From there, obviously, I've then used my reference line. So I then used that post, which we refer to as post A there, as the fixed reference line, which gives us that. And that has been measured to the top. And as a backup plan, in case anybody decided to ever check it, at the bottom of that post, we put a small black mark just at the bottom there. So we've got a fixed point at the bottom, and you can see where the top of the post is. And then that measure came up to that. We also take the same point, but try to flow through the same straight point of the body as close as we can from the base of his feet right through his body line to the top of the head. That can actually be seen by doing that. You just see that as near as I can, I've gone through the center point of his body. From there, I also drew this second line here, which I know that measurement. So we took that same principle, small black line at the bottom, and then measured to the top of the post. And when hopefully if everything's gone right, those 2 came out just like that. So it gives us a height of just below 1.7 meters for this gentleman here. And let's say 1.32 meters this side. I know that this measurement here should actually be 1319. So it's literally 5 millimeters out. But one issue we found in the evening view, which I didn't account for during the day, if I just zoom into that point, the wind has blown and moved the leaves over the top here. So I couldn't exactly pick the top of the post. So I've gone to the nearest point that I can see, which is right at the bottom edge of that leaf. So a few millimeters out, but 5 millimeters in the grand scale of things at that point
Hmm.
won't, and bearing in mind the similar distances, I'm only looking at what, 10 mil, probably 15 mil at most out on the right hand side. Again, this was done as a an assessment just to try and narrow down the field of possible suspects. It does help. The gentleman did turn out to be on the shorter side, so it narrowed that down. Then a full report was produced from this, ready for presentation in court. Whilst I submitted the ampedfive project to start with, our own SOPs, we have a specific report that we have to use. So I took some of the work from AMP and embedded that into the project, so and referenced it accordingly. And then that's it basically. It's from there that narrowed down a group of people that would since been, well, whilst we were doing this, found out that she'd been online dating, and that narrowed that field down to a handful of people rather than a larger group. And from there, they traced this person back, and he'd done a 17-mile bike ride and then left his bike about 3/4 of a mile down the road and walked to the scene. From there, everything went as any other case would: further investigation, interviews, and eventually a successful prosecution.
Okay.
He was only recently sentenced, and I think he's serving about 17 years and 8 months because he pleaded guilty before any court case.
How was his actual height?
That I never found out. They never actually told me his exact height. Somebody did say he was around 5'6", which I don't know how that equates to the obviously the metric measurement I've got here, but I don't think that would be far off. I mean, I'm 6'3", so I'm sort of 1.8 meters, so is quite a bit shorter than what I would be.
So in UK, you use a mixture of imperial and metric system.
Yeah.
Well, that's confusing.
Well, from my age, I was brought up with metric, imperial measurements. So everything my parents taught me was inches and feet. Then when I started working, everything changed to metric. So being able to work between the two was very, very easy for me.
Okay. So what was, in your opinion, the most complicated part of doing this job? Which was the issue? I mean, you had to do different tests to find the reliable lines. You test different frames. So, I mean, what were the challenges and, I mean, the solution to these challenges?
The initial challenge for this was the file format, which obviously I know I haven't been working on loads of different file formats. But at this point, AMP had already managed to resolve this one, so the project went straight in quite easily. The attention to detail on the measurements is the other thing, making sure that you get a fixed point here and then you accurately measure that top point. It's that on-site stuff that makes the difference later on. Again, on this one here, being able to see these lines across coming there. I mean, I think if I remember right, I think this one actually needs to be somewhere here, but it alters that by about 6 millimeters. It's that little bit. Let's say it's just double checking if you've got a daytime view to put this against where you can't see those lines accurately. Use it to your benefit. At the end of the day, you only have to copy the 3D measure and drop it onto a daytime view.
Yeah, that's a good trick.
And then it's it provides all the information there. You've already set it, and it's just whether you're accurate or not. But apart from that, I found it fairly easy. Obviously, I've been through all the AMP training, so for somebody who hasn't, I suggest they try and get on the training, go to the user days when they're online, pick up those little tips from people. The help's there. You've just got to ask for it.
Good, thank you. And yeah, we also, by the way, we also have a new training module specifically dedicated to go in depth on the measurements, so measure 1D, 2D, and 3D, which is the one that you have used here, and the speed estimation. So if some of the people watching this video wants to go more in depth about measurements, we have a specific module, training module dedicated to that. Okay, that is all very interesting. Also, I found interesting your observation earlier on that the quality wasn't that bad, and actually isn't that bad compared to other stuff that we have seen. There are a lot of pixels. If you look on the footer, you see what is 2688 by 1520, which is a lot for our standards.
Yeah.
But interestingly, when you zoom it in, you see a lot of compression, as usually happens.
You mean like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. You have a lot of pixels, but the actual definition, the actual detail that you can resolve, it's really damaged a lot by compression, as often happens. So it's always interesting to see we are adding pixels, but there's not much more information than before.
Yeah. There's also other bits to consider as well when you look at this, that I don't think his head would be to the top of this point, probably around here somewhere maybe. But again, the clothing element, which was done by a colleague, that's another thing. You have to consider that each and every time. Yes, we picked 2 points between the base of his foot and the top of what we can see, but how much gap is there in that space of the hood? We don't know.
Yeah, but also you have to consider the posture, that normally people is a bit lower because of the posture than the actual height. So maybe the two factors compensate, but it's one of the many challenges. You know, it's I don't know, thinks you've resolved it in a nice way here.
Yeah.
Another important thing that you highlighted is the importance of correcting the optical distortion from the lens. You have used undistort here.
Yes,
we also have the correct fisheye. You normally use undistort, correct fisheye. You try both and see what delivers the best results. What's your workflow there?
I normally go to undistort first, because if I can see a straight line that I know I can set, then I can predict what I'm doing. Then I've got control. The fisheye, I didn't really try on this because I got a fairly accurate result with this to start with. Say I've been to the scene, I've seen what the daytime views are like, and I knew where I was starting from in the first respect. If this came in from an investigator where I had no idea these have been provided for me, I may be looking at trying both to see which one provides the better option. But I had the advantage of actually being there at the time. So nice.
How often in your case are doing this kind of measurements? I mean, it's something occasionally you do it, you're requested very often, or
this is the first time we've used it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And with good success.
Yeah. So there's nothing like going in at the deep end straight onto a motor trial. There's a little bit of pressures there because obviously people are wanting answers quickly. But it's that, take your time, do it properly. Then you know when it comes back, someone asks you any questions or it gets sent to another side agency for checking, you've done everything right. Again, that little bit of attention to detail, and you won't go wrong anywhere.
Mhm. Good. Very interesting job. Thanks a lot for sharing it with us. Is there any additional closing remark you want to do on this work, on this case, or anything related to this to the work that you're doing?
Every job's different. You get a simple job that you still might use AMP for, but then you do get a complex job where more information is required like this. Take every bit step by step. Any training you use, try to use it to the best of your ability. And worst case scenario, ask for help. There are plenty of people out there that are willing to have a phone conversation with you, drop in on a Zoom meeting, anything like that, just to give you a bit of a guidance and say, try this. You know, you still have to do the work yourself, but just that extra idea or someone's different perspective might make your job that little bit easier.
Very good advice.
Yeah. And there's always AMP support. As you say, you and your colleagues, you're always there on the Discord channel, even on the Lever forum. Keep seeing names pop up that I know from there. Can't say enough about the support that AMP provide.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Right.
Okay, thanks again for showing this very interesting case with us, and it was a pleasure having you here and meeting you as usual.
It's a pleasure to be there as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, bye.